What a night it was for every Celtic supporter around the world. You could feel something special in the air at Celtic Park, that unmistakable buzz that only happens when history feels like it's repeating itself in the best possible way. After such a chaotic week, filled with frustration, uncertainty, and a fair bit of anger following Brendan Rodgers' resignation, Celtic fans finally had something to smile about. Martin O'Neill, the man who shaped an entire generation of Celtic memories, walked back onto that touchline. And let's be honest, the sight of him there again, in his tracksuit, waving to the stands like the old days, was pure emotion. For many of us, it was like watching a piece of our childhood come back to life. The guy who led us to glory 2 decades ago, who gave us moments we'll never forget, was suddenly back in charge. Even if just temporarily, and instantly the mood around the club felt different. When the team news came out, you could sense optimism returning. Marcelo Serra back in the squad was the first big positive sign, and that instantly gave a lift to the fans. Austin Trusty replacing Dane Murray made sense to everyone, and the decision to bench Rio Hatate, who's been struggling to find rhythm lately, showed that O'Neill wasn't here to play favorites. No room either for Kieran Tierney or Shinyamata this time, which raised a few eyebrows. But instead, Johnny Kenny got the nod up front, and what a call that turned out to be. It felt like O'Neill trusted his instincts, went back to basics, and reminded the players what Celtic football is supposed to look like. High energy, direct, full of passion, and never overcomplicating the game. Before the match, there was that small protest at 7 o'clock outside the ground. Nothing too explosive, more like a symbolic gesture, a reminder that supporters want change at the board level. But even that felt united, a show of solidarity from a fan base that, no matter what's happening behind the scenes, still bleeds green and white. Once everyone filtered inside and the announcer, that familiar voice that's been echoing through the stadium for years, said the words, "Let's make some noise for Martin O'Neill." It sent chills down the spine. The roar that followed was deafening. It wasn't just noise. It was emotion, nostalgia, and belief all rolled into one. For a brief moment, it felt like the old Celtic Park was alive again. The opening 20 minutes were tense, though. There was a bit of nervous energy as the players adjusted. Falkirk pressed high, trying to unsettle the rhythm, and Celtic were still finding their shape. Benjamin had that early chance to make it 1-0, missed it, and oddly enough, that miss seemed to lift the team instead of sinking it. From that moment, Celtic found their confidence. They began moving the ball quicker, pushing forward, and really taking control of the match. You could see the influence of O'Neill's simple message. Stop the endless sideways passing. Stop giving the center, backs, and the goalkeeper half the ball, and instead, go and express yourselves. It worked. Marcelo Serra was absolutely everywhere. He's raw. Yes, sometimes unpredictable, but the amount of energy he brings to the pitch is contagious. You can't teach that. He covered every blade of grass, made dangerous runs, and delivered quality balls into the box. After a few disappointing games where the left side of Celtic's attack looked lifeless, his return felt like oxygen. You could see how much it meant to the crowd, too. Every time he drove forward, there was a buzz, a sense that something might happen. And when the final whistle went, fans were beaming, not just because of the scoreline, but because they'd seen their team play with freedom again. 4-0, clean sheet, and arguably the best domestic performance since August. That's how you announce a new era, even if it's only for a short while. It was the kind of result that brings joy back to the stands. Martin O'Neill couldn't have asked for a better start. Sure, tougher tests are coming, but this was exactly what everyone needed, a reset. After weeks of frustration and dull football, Celtic finally looked like Celtic again. And for fans who've been desperate for something to believe in, that means everything. You could see the small details that O'Neill had already influenced. The wingers were hugging the touchline more than we've seen in months, stretching Falkirk's defense wide open. James Forrest, in particular, looked reborn. For the first 45 minutes, he was electric, sharp, fast, and fearless. It's as if someone reminded him of the player he's always been. Austin Trusty, slotting back into defense, looked composed, doing the basics right. He didn't have a huge amount to do, but when called upon, he handled it calmly. What stood out most, though, was how quickly the team moved the ball. No hesitation, no overthinking, just intent. Celtic's possession stats actually dropped to around 60%, their second lowest in the league this season, but that wasn't a negative. In fact, it told the story of a team playing with more purpose. Instead of holding onto the ball endlessly, they were taking risks, moving it forward, and creating chance after chance. The expected goals, or XG as analysts like to say, was the highest of any Scottish Premiership side this season. The irony, of course, is that Martin O'Neill has never been a fan of such modern stats, but even he must have smiled at how clinical his side looked. What made the night even better was the mood around the team. There was laughter again. You could see it in the players' body language. You could hear it in O'Neill's interviews after the match. He joked about the physio telling him that Dyson Maeda had 35 minutes in him. How they calculated 35? I've no idea, he said with that classic grin. And he even quipped that James Forrest did brilliantly considering he's the same age as me. It was light-hearted, human, exactly what the club needed after weeks of tension. For players like Johnny Kinney, it was a dream night. 2 goals, sharp finishes, and a confidence boost that could define his season. For O'Neill, it was proof that his faith in the younger lads wasn't misplaced. Callum Osmond even got his first competitive minutes late on, a small but symbolic gesture that echoed what O'Neill used to do back in his first spell at the club, giving youth a chance when the opportunity was right. It reminded a lot of older fans of those Sean Maloney-type moments from the early 2000s when a youngster would get his shot and take it. The atmosphere in the stands was electric, not just because of the scoreline, but because it felt like the supporters and the players were finally back in sync. Everyone knew it was only one match, but it felt bigger than that. It felt like a fresh start. After all the criticism, the finger-pointing, and the sense that the team had lost its identity under Rodgers in those final weeks, this performance showed that the fire is still there. It just needed the right spark. And that spark, without a doubt, was Martin O'Neill. For those who lived through his first reign, it was pure nostalgia. For younger fans who've only heard the stories, it was a living history lesson. O'Neill's aura, that quiet confidence he carries, you can't fake that. Even after all these years away from management, he walked back into Celtic Park like he'd never left. You could see how the players responded to him. They were relaxed but focused, disciplined but expressive. That's what leadership looks like. Now, of course, the real test comes on Sunday against Rangers. That's the one that will define whether this bounce under O'Neill is just a moment or the start of something meaningful. But for now, Celtic fans can finally breathe again. They can smile, talk about football with excitement, and remember what it feels like to go home from a match buzzing. Because that's what this club is all about: passion, unity, and belief. And even though it's early days, you can't help but feel that something has shifted. The players look happier, the supporters sound louder, and the stadium feels alive again. Whatever happens next, this night at Celtic Park reminded everyone why they fell in love with the game in the first place. There's something deeply emotional about watching Martin O'Neill on that touchline again, pacing up and down, clapping his hands, barking out instructions like it was the early 2000s all over again. For supporters who remember the days of Sutton, Hartson, Larsson, and Petrov, it brought back so many memories. You could almost close your eyes and hear the echoes of those legendary European nights at Celtic Park when O'Neill's side would take on anyone and never blink. But beyond nostalgia, there's something more important happening here. Celtic have been missing that sense of leadership, that aura, that belief that no matter how rough things get, the badge on the chest still means something. And that's exactly what he's brought back, even in just a few days. The impact on the squad was clear as day. Players who had looked tired and disconnected suddenly looked alive again. You could see it in their movement, in their urgency, in the way they celebrated every tackle and every goal. It was as if someone had lifted a weight off their shoulders. And that's what O'Neill does best. He simplifies things. He doesn't overload players with tactical jargon or endless data sheets. He reminds them why they're here, what the club stands for, and what wearing that green and white jersey should feel like. It's old-school management in the best possible way: direct, human, emotional, and brutally honest. You look at someone like Anthony Ralston, who struggled for form recently, and he suddenly looked sharp again. His passing was cleaner, his runs were purposeful, and he played with confidence. James Forrest, who many had started to write off, rolled back the years with his pace and energy. It's not just physical, it's mental. When a manager believes in you, you start believing in yourself again. O'Neill has always had that gift of bringing the best out of players who were doubted. He did it in his first spell at Celtic, and it seems like he's already doing it again. And then there's the supporters. You could feel the love pouring from the stands. Every chant, every roar, every clap carried that mixture of relief and pride. It wasn't just about beating Falkirk. It was about reconnecting with what Celtic means. The past few months have been rough, the football flat, the atmosphere subdued, and the club feeling like it was drifting without direction. But O'Neill's presence has reawakened something. He's reminded everyone that football isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet or passing percentages. It's about passion, heart, and purpose. When you strip everything back, that's what drives Celtic. Of course, no one's naive enough to think everything's suddenly perfect. The squad still has gaps, injuries are still an issue, and there's still uncertainty about what happens after this interim spell. But for the first time in a long time, there's hope. And sometimes, that's all a football club needs to start turning things around. The performance against Falkirk might not have been against the toughest opponent, but it showed character, confidence, and intent. It showed that the players still care, that they still want to fight for the badge. You could also sense how much it meant to O'Neill personally. In his post-match interview, he was his usual self, charming, witty, but with that edge of pride in his voice. When asked how it felt to be back, he just smiled and said something along the lines of, "It's nice to be home." Simple words, but they carried so much weight. For him, Celtic isn't just another job. It's family, and you can see how much that connection still means to him. Even after years away, he walks into the stadium and the place erupts. That's legacy. That's respect. Sunday's match against Rangers now looms large. It's the kind of fixture that defines seasons, that separates managers who can handle the pressure from those who crumble under it. O'Neill's history in those games is legendary. He knows what it takes to win them, not just tactically but emotionally. His teams never went into those derbies afraid. They went in knowing who they were, knowing what the fixture meant. And right now, that's exactly what Celtic need: belief. They've gone a few matches without a win against their rivals, and fans have been desperate for that moment of redemption. This could be it. But it's not just about the scoreline. It's about the identity. The Celtic that played on Wednesday looked like a team rediscovering itself. The fullbacks pushed high, the midfield pressed with purpose, and the front line attacked with real conviction. The tempo was quicker, the transitions sharper. There was urgency in everything they did. When O'Neill said before the game that his message to the players was simply go out and win, it sounded almost too simple. But that's the genius of it. Sometimes football doesn't need overthinking. Sometimes it just needs clarity. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. In what could be the most jaw-dropping twist of the season so far, whispers from inside Parkhead suggest that Celtic have struck a deal to bring HICKEY to Glasgow, sending shockwaves through the Scottish Premiership and beyond. The news, though not officially confirmed, is already stirring fevered debate among supporters and pundits alike, with the potential signing being hailed as a game-changer for Ange Postecoglou's side. Sources close to the club hint that negotiations have moved at lightning speed, and while the fee remains shrouded in secrecy, it's believed Celtic were prepared to pull out all the stops to secure the young Scottish international. HICKEY, who has impressed in England with his versatility and composure on the ball, would add a fresh dynamism to a squad already buzzing with ambition. Parkhead insiders suggest the fullback could slot in seamlessly on either flank, giving Postecoglou the tactical flexibility that has so often been missing in key fixtures. The buzz in Glasgow is palpable. Fans have taken to social media in droves, speculating on how HICKEY's arrival could reshape Celtic's approach in the Premiership and European competitions. Could this be the missing piece in a campaign that has been impressive but at times inconsistent? Those close to the negotiations hint that Celtic see HICKEY not just as a player, but as a statement of intent, an announcement that they are ready to challenge and perhaps redefine the power dynamics in Scottish football. Meanwhile, the player himself remains characteristically tight-lipped. Those sources suggest he is excited by the prospect of returning home and testing himself in front of the notoriously passionate Celtic supporters. Rumors swirl that rival clubs had also shown interest, making Celtic's reported win even sweeter for the Hoops faithful. Analysts are already speculating how his presence could impact the development of younger players, and whether his flair could be the spark to ignite a title charge that feels tantalizingly within reach. As Parkhead prepares for what could be a blockbuster reveal, the Scottish football world holds its breath. If the whispers prove true, Aaron Hickey's move could be remembered not just as a transfer, but as the moment Celtic truly changed the tempo of their season. Until then, speculation rages, and fans are left imagining the roar of the Celtic crowd greeting a new hero on the hallowed turf. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.